Today we are talking all about, of course, AI, ChatGPT. I think all of us have been pretty aware of the vast rate of change with generative AI at this point for over the last, 6 months now. And the big question is, how can we use it in our fractional CMO practices, use it for our clients? So at WebMechanix, just briefly, quick introduction. I head up partnerships, and Josh Muskin, who will be presenting today, is a VP of Sales and Marketing. And we have been very deep in the weeds with ChatGPT and other generative AI tools, testing it out for ourselves, using it for our clients, and we've got some exciting stuff to share. So we're going to walk through, amongst other things, 10 prompts that you can take away from this call to start using in your own practices. We're also going to share some high-level tips and sort of frameworks you can use when approaching generative AI to apply it to marketing, to crank up marketing performance. So yeah, without further ado, Josh, I'll let you take it away and get this rolling.
Thank you, Jarrett. Everyone can see my screen, I sure hope.
We got it.
Jarrett's nodding, so I'm assuming he's going to talk for everybody. Awesome. So good to see some new faces and new names, see some repeats from the last time we did an event with Fractionals. So welcome back to those of you. Thanks for being here again. Today, we're going to spend a little bit of time talking about AI prompts, particularly 10 of them that we really like to use that are relevant to people in marketing, marketing leadership. These are going to be less tactical, say, than how to get a specific output for a task, but it's something that our teams, as far as developing strategy or creating efficiencies in their day-to-day, find using more often than not. So a little bit about me before we get into it. As Jared said, I head up sales and marketing at WebMechanix. For the 12 years prior to that, I was on the accounts and marketing side of the business. So I've been working both in strategy and execution and everything in between, really, for digital marketing for almost the last 15 years total. I worked with everywhere from Fortune 5 to Fortune 500 to Fortune 5000 companies, varying in size, lots of B2B, some B2C. And the super nonsensical fun fact about me is I'm down to 38 seconds on one of these silly things.
Nice.
So irrelevant for today. But what is relevant for today is we're going to go over 5 things in the next hour. We're going to talk about this content's for you, if just making sure it's relevant to all the folks here. What our goal for today is, how it is that we're going to define a prompt for the sake of our conversation today. Go through 10 prompts and examples of prompts that I will walk through both in slide format, and I can certainly demo any in an actual environment here if we need to or would like to. And then how you can keep up to date as we're continuing to learn more and publish more about this topic, and everyone is becoming more and more informed about what our AI options and the abilities are. Before I get into really the details, I just want to say one thing. A lot of times we'll say, hey, keep all your questions till the end. We got a good flow here. Wait till we're finished. But for the purpose of today, if you have questions, drop them in the chat or come off mute and pipe up. I'd much rather answer them, particularly if we're in kind of a live example mode, than saving everything for the end and trying to recreate something that may have piqued your interest in the middle. So feel free to raise your hand and we'll get through whatever we can. So this content is for you if you're working for one or more multiple clients, acting as a CMO, whether in fractional or full-time capacity. You're looking for ways to increase your efficiency or your effectiveness of your team's marketing work. And everyone around you is clamoring on about ChatGPT and AI, and you feel an urge to clamor back a little bit, but you're not maybe sure what to say. So we'll give you some examples here to do that. Our goal in particular today, just help you learn more about ChatGPT in general, what it is, how you can use it, expose you to maybe some examples you haven't seen before, learn about different styles and types of prompts that you can use, that even though we may show one example today, you can take that style and that format and use it for different purposes down the road. And hopefully you find some useful prompts that you can start using after this call or tomorrow or very shortly with your team. Then you can actually take this and put the rubber to the road. So we're going to go over 10 powerful prompts, but first let's cover a couple small details that'll help today make a little bit more sense. First, what is a prompt as far as how we're talking about it? So what we're talking about is a structured request to an AI language model designed to invite a useful and predictable response. So we're going to use ChatGPT as our example, but this is the same thing for Bard, or in some cases Jasper or Maker, or some of the others that folks mentioned in the chat. It's really just learning how to communicate with these platforms that have a similar data set to one another. So with that in mind, let's start with our first one. So all these slides are formatted in such a way that much of them can be copy pasted into ChatGPT, for example. So I'll show a few examples of this, but that's why the formatting in text will sometimes be long and not and italicized, and we'll go all over it. But I wanted to put this one first because one of the apprehensions people have to using platforms like this is maybe you're not sure what to ask, or you think like you're going to ask a simple question and you're not going to get a super detailed answer. The beauty of these systems is you can actually have them be your coach as well. So one thing that we do here a lot of WebMechanix is we give an ask, and then we actually ask ChatGPT and say, hey, can you give me a better way to ask what I just asked? And so, for example, in this particular prompt, it is somewhat long-winded, but we find that more detail sometimes is better. We like to give it a job or a name or an identity. You're going to be my prompt creator. Your goal is to help me craft the best possible prompt for my needs. And it will be used by you, ChatGPT, and you will follow this process. So we've defined it, and we're starting now to give it a process to use. Your first response will be to ask me what the prompt should be about. I will provide my answer, but we will need to improve it through continual iterations by going through the next steps. Based on my input, you'll generate 3 sections: a revised prompt, which will be one that it writes better than me, suggestions for what else to add, and questions that it thinks it should ask so that I give it more and proper information. Prompt you provide should be in the form of a request made by me to you. We'll continue in this process until I say it's complete. So to show you an example here, if I take that prompt and I plop it in here and run it, it's going to ask me that first question I asked you. What should the prompt be about? Prompt should be about, let's say, as an example, creating an outline for an AI training using ChatGPT. So, yeah, so Rob, I will share all these slides to everybody, so you'll have them in PDF format. So now it's going to start doing this a little for me. So here it's going to say, hey, this is how you should have asked me in the first place. If you want me to give you a better answer, maybe include some of this information. Who's the target audience? How long is the course? What is the structure? What key topics are you going to cover? Identify what types of outcomes the participants are going to have. And then it's going to ask me those in question format so that if I want to, I can sit here and respond to question 1, 2, 3, and 4. And then it will continue to revise the prompt, give suggestions, and ask questions until I tell it that the revised prompt is good, in which case I can just copy and save that revised prompt for all of my future needs. So long-winded thing, you give it a process of what you want to do, an ultimate goal, and it will continue to cycle through this for as long as you need it to. So if you're ever wondering how to ask it a question, sometimes the simplest question is just to ask. The next thing I'm going to talk about, these next 3 are going to be directly related to one another. This is something I found really valuable sitting in the marketing seat that I'm in now, trying to figure out who my target market is, how I should expose my messaging to them, what are the things that they care for. It would be awesome if I had a focus group of all the directors and VPs of marketing in the space in our agency could help, and I can ask them individual one-on-one questions, but that's like a little unreasonable, expensive, insert some other things. So we can actually use ChatGPT to develop personas for us and then query those personas with questions that we would have for, say, a normal one-to-one person. So in here, I'm saying, create me a persona for, in this case, I know for WebMechanix, it's director, VP of marketing. In these examples, and as I share them out to you, where I've put brackets and where I've highlighted things in bold, this is where you would put your particular information for your clients, your business, what have you. So if you weren't targeting directors, VPs marketing, you would put whatever it is that you're targeting here. The primary goal of my request about this persona is to determine what this person views as valuable when searching for and selecting a digital marketing agency. So again, selfish to WebMechanix, but you would put your desires here. Write me a persona, make sure to include things that are important and that are often disregarded by this person. So I'll start a new chat, too many buttons. I can plop that in here, and now it's going to write persona. It's going to give it a name. It's going to give it a title. It's going to pick an industry. Maybe that's not the industry I want, so I can have it go back and change that, company size, etc. And it's going to write this all out for me in typical sort of persona format. And I'll tell you how, I'll come back to this in a second. So it'll define that person. If I want to edit it, I can go back and say, hey, make it 200 employees, make it B2B SaaS, make it West Coast. And I can make its edits until I'm satisfied with the output that it's giving. But what's nice about this is I can now ask it follow-up questions based on this persona. So my examples here say Elizabeth, because that's the first persona that it gave me when I made the deck. But in this case, I guess it's going to be Samantha. Either will be fine. So now instead of referencing that entire persona it made for me, I can say, hey, how would Samantha react to the following value statement? And so I'm going to add this in here. I'll wait for it to be done. Give me a lot. All right. Give me some disregard. And for the sake of speed, I'll stop it. So now I'm going to ask it how Samantha would react to we're a data-driven agency that pushes the boundaries of modern marketing. You won't find any guru design best practices here, only real measurable results, so on and so on. So now it's going to give me what she might think. Now, obviously, Samantha's not a super real person, but it's going against how it predicted this persona in the first place. So it might be intrigued by data-driven. It aligns with her values of innovation and results-driven strategies. The dimension of real and measurable results will also resonate, ensuring an optimal return on her investment. However, and then I can think about things that she might not like. She may feel the statement was somewhat dismissive towards established industry best practices. Like maybe they are good, and we shouldn't dismiss them entirely, which could raise concerns about if we actually know what it is that we're talking about. So this is really valuable when you're crafting your first cold email to a no audience, or you're designing an ad campaign to an audience whom you haven't targeted before. And you can take your copy, your headlines, your angles, your offers, and say, hey, how would this persona that you helped me create that I edited with you react to this? And when you get to a point where the reactions seem reasonable, you're pushing the boundaries you want, but you're aligned directly to the things that are important to them, it can almost be like a pre-test of your messaging without actually having to spend dollars on it, put it behind it. So we could go back and forth for hours here, trying to create new statements that Elizabeth or Samantha or whomever would really love until we're satisfied with the results that came back. The other thing that you can do with these personas, as an example, is you can expose it to a web page. This could be a landing page, could be a new page you designed, could be your website domain in general. You could say, hey, what would be Samantha's feedback on this page? Particularly, I'm interested in, and I wrote requirements, but it could be like the length, the level of detail, or the assets on it relevant to her. You could also just not give it guidance at all. And you could say, hey, what would Samantha's feedback be to this page? And ChatGPT is at a point now where it can actually crawl the page that you give it. And so it can tell you against, again, that persona information, what feedback they might give you. It's going to give you positives. It's going to give you concerns. It's going to give you any other information that you might want. And again, you can ask follow-up questions on each of these individual ones. So if this is viewed as positive, a strong, clear value proposition, maybe ask it to expand. How would it be? How could it be stronger? What other information about this value proposition might she like? And you can kind of go down these individualized rabbit holes where you have questions. But the key point that I want to make with these three, these three prompts here is that the prompts aren't one-off and then move on to a totally new thing. You can tack them onto each other. So if you create a persona, you can ask that persona for feedback, you can ask it for advice on a particular page, and you can do that all within the same chat. And that way you're getting information that's related. You're sort of creating a sphere of questions and answers that are revolving around a topic that you don't have to remaster each time. And because you have this ability to save your chats, particularly with GPT-4, you could have a chat per persona. And as you need to, pop back into that old chat, ask some more questions to that individual persona, and have them continue to update as you go over time. I am moving away from persona-based. Those were three examples I had. Does anyone have any questions before I move out of that topic? All right. Nope. Well, if any come to mind, go ahead and throw them in the chat. But a little silence there now, so I'll move on. So, excuse me, outside of persona-based, how do we know if these responses reflect reality? You don't, kind of. You know, you have to take this kind of thing with a grain of salt. The hope is that the person who's querying these personas has some generalized information about what these people are like. Like I've worked with plenty of directors and VPs of marketing just on the client side of things. So I can generally get a sense if the responses seem nonsensical or wildly off. But in the same way that you wouldn't know if an audience would resonate with the headline you wrote until you tested it, you don't really know the same thing here. You're getting sort of the average of all of the internet's information about this user to tell you if it's plus or minus closer to what you think that they would want. So reality is always going to be the thing you have to test against. And that's a good question, Dave. We can't say that these are all going to be perfect, but you'll find that if you start with an individual headline for an ad, for example, and then you also go through this process and you create a second headline and you test them against each other, that would be a good way for you to understand if the one you spent all the work interacting with ChatGPT for to get to actually performs better than the one that you thought. And if that happens consistently, then you know that you're onto something that's validated in reality as well as a chat screen. So good question. Moving to number 5, for anyone who manages either a team of BDRs or SDRs or sales folks, or even has to interact with sales in general, but maybe has trouble extracting what sales does a really good job of when they do close some marketing leads versus maybe where they struggle, or how we as marketers can provide better and more useful information to prospects so that sales can close better. One of the things that we've done here at WebMechanix is we've taken calls that have closed clients into new business, either in a single call or they were just really well executed as far as getting someone from like, I'm not sure, to like, sure, swipe my credit card. We use Gong in our case, but if you're using any call recording software where you can extract a transcript, you can take transcripts from multiple calls, stack them into one big export, and give ChatGPT the situation. Hey, below, I'm going to paste a bunch of transcripts from salespeople who are closing down. Here's what I need you to do. I need you to go through and find the most common objections and the common responses from the salespeople. If there are multiple approaches to those objections, you can note them separately, paste in that huge transcript, and let it run. And what you'll find, hopefully, is a pattern between the objections that are tackled in the proper way that are resulting in calls actually moving to things like closed won or people moving to the next steps. And you can distill very quickly from a large volume of text how it is that you might be able to address objections in your marketing collateral versus having to wait for sales to do. So it does require having a transcript or an ability to create transcripts out of sales calls. But if you can identify 5, 10, 15 really high quality calls that are all A+ from that way, this is a really good idea where you don't have to bother sales, but you can also get really good information from them. And then they'll be super happy because people will come pre-qualified and their objections already taken. This one is very simple. There is something called multi-shot prompts, or 1-shot, 2-shot, 3-shot, etc. So there are multiple ways that you could prompt ChatGPT. For example, you could say, hey, write me 5 subject lines about B2B marketing, and it will do that, right? And the more detail you give it, obviously, the better. But what is even better than that is if you give it examples of really high performing, in this case, subject lines, as well as examples of really poorly performing subject lines. And instead of saying, hey, write me something from the ether, you're saying, hey, write me something about this topic. Here are 5 examples where it's great. Here are 5 examples where it isn't good. Use those as inspiration to then give me something more useful. And you will find that the more examples you give it, both on the positive and negative side of a goal, the better its outcomes will be, simply because it has more to work off of. It's no different than giving an employee or a team member examples of things that worked and asking them to iterate. You're just able to do it, 5, 10, 15, 20 times in a matter of seconds versus a task out to a team member. But the point, whether you're doing it for subject lines or headlines or blog posts or frankly anything, if you have real examples of where something has or has not performed, definitely leverage those and allow the system to adjust them before giving the response back to you. And you will find that you're getting a higher quality response, more closely aligned to what you actually want versus something that clearly feels like it was written by a robot. I like this one very much selfishly. There are plenty of times where either on calls or in discussion, I am attempting to make a point and I'm talking seemingly in circles about trying to make that point. I can't quite distill it down to a sentence. It's the old Mark Twain quote that isn't actually a Mark Twain quote of if I had more time, I would have written a shorter letter. That's kind of what we're trying to do here. So if you find yourself doing that or struggling to write and you need to write one sentence, but all you can think of are pages of paragraphs, make a voice note and just talk at it for as long as it feels like you need to get to the point that you're trying to get to. Do that with voice, do that with text, and take that entire transcript and then ask ChatGPT to jam it down into something much more bite-sized. So you can say, take the following text distilled into 1 to 2 sentences max, or 90 characters, or a paragraph, or whatever length you're really looking for. Tell me the most important points I'm trying to make, simplify them greatly so that the statements they're concise, they're measured, they're impactful. If there are multiple points I'm making, you can break it down into multiple different statements. Maybe I'm trying to say 2 things and I don't actually realize that. And in addition to that, bullet out any of the top points you've observed and then deliver me feedback on how to better describe anything that you feel was incomplete. So I find this a lot when I'm in the middle of a discovery, or I'm in the middle of really trying to ideate on a new idea or a new topic, and I just can't quite get where I'm going, and I need a reframing of what it is that I'm talking about or thinking about. You can more or less just word vomit into a voice note, paste it in here, and ask it to be distilled for you, and you'll be surprised how much inspiration that can give you in terms of creating a concise mission statement or headline or message or subject or whatever it is that you're really after. But just kind of taking your thoughts and clearing them. The next one is 2 slides. It's kind of long, but this is an example of where you can give ChatGPT a personality. You can give it a job, you can give it a framing, and you can use it over and over again by starting with a prompt that feels very large and feels very robust in nature, but then your subsequent inputs to it can actually be very short. And you can still get the same quality response coming out of it. In this case, we've named it SalesGPT. We use this internally for when you're talking to a new prospect and you go to look at their website, but you have absolutely no idea what their company does because of the jargon, the industry. It's just something you're not familiar with. You can give it some really basic inputs, such as company name, company website, and it can give you a series of predetermined responses about that company, kind of like a one-sheeter, if you will. So first, we have to give it that personality. We have to tell it who it is and what it is acting as, and that's what this first slide shows. So we're saying, as SalesGPT, we're a language model designed to help salespeople at WebMechanix, obviously put in your company, digital marketing agency, prepare for calls with prospects when they haven't met. For inputs, you'll receive the following inputs formatted as a piece of information and a description of information. So an important thing to note here is you're telling it how you're going to give it information, and you're basically creating variables. You can use brackets, you don't have to. I'd use it for my own personal kind of organization of what it is that's in here, but you're telling it how to expect information from you. So I'm going to give you a piece of information and then a description of that information. So I'm going to give you company name, which is the name of the company inquired by the marketing services. I'm going to give you their website of that company. Based on the inputs provided, please provide a structured, factual, skimmable, and jargonless response under the SalesGPT persona. Jargonless, you can also tell it to explain it to you like you're 5. It does wonderful Lego analogies, but it gets the job done if you're in a pinch. So we've defined what it's going to do, and now we're going to tell it how to respond. So here's the format for your response. You're going to repeat back to me the company name, same as what's in the input. The description of the company, you'll tell me in 300 words or less what it does, who it serves, and what its major products and services are. Description of those products and services. Identify competitors in the industry, who their target market is, what do they say their key differentiators are, notable achievements or awards, and then confirm that it's ready to go and start. So when you do this, you're basically giving it this one big giant prompt, and it looks like this. This is exactly what I have in there, just paste it all at once. And you're saying, hey, confirm you're ready to go. When it confirms you're ready to go, then all you have to do is give it those 2 inputs. Then it will give you everything you asked for in the format of which you asked for it. It'll tell you their name, who they are, what their products and services are, who it views their competitors to be, target audience, differentiators, notable achievements, awards, etc. You can ask it to expand on any of these individual things. Again, it's following that sort of like rabbit hole mentality of like, wait, how exactly is Noom a competitor of this? And it can go and expand on it. But the nice thing is here, like I have in my bookmark right there, you can have it bookmarked. It can be a saved prompt for you, and you can just pop in here at any point, give it a company name and a website, get the same answer, get out of there. So it's another way of defining who it is, how it's going to interact. Like this whole chat that I have saved is only going to be these interactions. It's only going to be this big prompt and me asking it for information. If I start asking it other questions in here, it might get confused as to what it is doing and how it's answering me. But the more you keep it consistent, the more you will get consistent answers back. And when you do this over and over and over again, dozens, hundreds of times, you'll find that you're even able to refine its responses so that you get something slightly more valuable too. So long one here, if you're going to use this, do note that it's this entire first part and this entire second part that you would need to paste in, but then you're otherwise good to go as you go. And I've got two more here. This is another one that's great. Again, if you're using call recordings, if you go on vacation, heaven forbid, and you come back to some huge email thread that you need to figure out what in the world people were talking about and what to do, basically view the below, whatever it is, a chat, an email thread, a call transcript, something large that you don't feel like reading, and distill it for me in bullet points, the action items and associated dates in the below format, action item, due date. And it will go through the entire thing. It will find anything that remotely sounds like, yeah, sure, I'll totally send that over right after this meeting, or we're going to meet next week on Wednesday. And it'll understand everything that was said when it's supposed to happen. And it will give you basically a list of to-do items. And you can understand those to-dos are for you. You can follow up with the team as far as what they are and make sure that they were checked off if you were out of the office. But it's a really nice way when you have that 38 thread email that you just have no idea why you're CC'd on it. You need to figure out what's going on inside of it. Paste the entire thing in there, get a quick to-do list of what you've got. This also works with, hey, anytime call transcripts, anytime someone mentions the word contract, give me a timestamp so I can go back and listen to it. You can give it those sorts of directives, but it's really a matter of giving it something, defining exactly how you want it to look at it and the format in which you want it to respond. Those are some key pieces as far as getting what it is that you want. Number 10 here, this isn't technically a prompt, but it is something that I've run into. AI is seemingly and feels like the most advanced thing we've all dealt with in a long time, but it is still super susceptible to the turn it off and turn it on again method. I've found that when I really start getting into a back and forth with a particular chat and I'm trying to get a piece of information distilled, every now and then I feel like I'm asking it the same question in 11 different ways, but I just keep getting the same answer. I'm not getting that extra iterative answer that I'm hoping for, that one extra piece of information that I really want. And it can feel frustrating, like, what am I doing? This isn't working. I should just go and do something else. What I often find is that taking the last relevant piece of information you were given, starting a brand new chat, popping that in and starting over sometimes resets whatever database it's using to give you the answers, and you can progress your conversation with these language models in that way. So if you're feeling like you're just getting the same answer over and over again, even though you're trying super duper hard to get some different kind of answer, just starting a new chat or opening a new window or refreshing the page and starting over again oftentimes is the solution to that problem, particularly if it's starting to feel very repetitive.
A question from Amy B. Is there a word limit on doing that?
Is there a word limit on doing that? There is, but it's like really big, especially if you're using the paid GPT-4 version. It's like tens of thousands of words or something.
Yeah,
that can be put in there. So you would have kind of a hard time hitting that limit. I'm going to pause briefly here too. Any questions on any of these individual prompts, the philosophies behind them? I have one more sort of holistic takeaway slide that we'll talk about for a minute or two here in a second, but I wanted to pause in case anyone wanted me to go back, show a different example, talk about a different way to use any of these individually.
Awesome. Thanks, Dave.
Thank you, Dave. So I wanted to give a quick recap. I obviously gave 9 really specific examples of prompts that you can copy and paste in, and that's useful, I hope. But the things that I hope you take away are really how those prompts are built and how I'm interacting with the system more than like what literally I typed on these slides. And so some non-prompt specific things to take away. Ask ChatGPT for help improving your prompts. If you think you're doing a really good job of asking it something, but you're not satisfied with the answer you're getting back, ask it what other information it could use to give an even better response. And then we'll give you some bullets of some other things you can add. In that way, like, yes, it is you asking it telling, but it can also help you in saying, hey, I could do a slightly better job if you gave you this, or gave it to me in this order, or you asked me this question first. Absolutely feel free to stop, give a thing and say, hey, I'm not really satisfied with these answers. Am I not giving you something that would make your response better? Give it formats in which to deliver your answer. If you want something in bullets, ask for bullets. If you want something, a label dash description, ask for that. It will abide by, generally speaking, any format that you give it to answer in, but that way you can get a better sense of knowing exactly what to expect back out of the system and how it's going to come versus expecting bullets and getting paragraphs and being frustrated and dissatisfied. Coding variables into prompts to be updated later can be super valuable. So going back to where is it here? The SalesGPT example, I'm saying, hey, I'm going to give you these inputs. This is how I'm going to give it to you. This is what they're going to be. And that way you can set a master prompt with like 2 or 3 things that you're consistently going to update. And when you go back to that saved chat, you're just updating those individual variables. You don't have to go back and re-prompt the entire system over and over and over again. So giving it variables that you can update as long as you're acting within that same chat window makes it much more easy and much less time consuming to interact with because you're not starting over from scratch each time. I made this mention in the better variations prompt. Basically give it good examples for better output. If garbage in, garbage out. But if you're giving it something that's good and you're saying, hey, I really, really like this, but here's this other question, please answer in this format or with this in mind or with this quality, you will get better examples than if you're just leaving it up to itself. When you get stuck, start over. And the other one is treat ChatGPT as ChatGPT, just a Q&A, miscellaneous question, random thing, or help it to find its own role. Tell it who it is, what it is, how it should act, what it should believe. If what it should believe might get weird, but tell it how you might want it to respond to something. So you may define its voice. You may say, hey, I want all of your answers to my questions about copy and paragraphs to be witty and have an intellectual sense of humor and to constantly end with ellipses and leave me hanging for the end of a joke. Give it a sense of how you want it to respond. You want it to respond super professional because you're working with a bunch of lawyers and you don't want to make any funny jokes. You just want everything to be buttoned up and super legalese sounding. Tell it that too, and it will edit the way that it responds. You can also give it a blog post or a short story or something where you really enjoy the tone and the message and say, hey, all of your responses should mimic this, this tone, this language. You could do that for your own website to match language and tone. You can do that simply if you want to interact with it as a funny person instead of a not funny person. It doesn't really matter, but you can again tell it who it is and what it is, and you can even do that down here in system prompt. So you'll set the date and time, etc. But in this big window up here, you can even give it some more directive. You can say, hey, you are XYZ GPT. You don't have to put GPT at the end of it, but your name is Steven, and Steven enjoys long walks on the beach and horror movies. And so I want you to make references to those 2 things in all your responses to me. Thanks, Ron. But as you're thinking about new prompts or new things you could do, really, this is what I want your takeaways to be from today. Like, hey, if you can copy paste any of the prompts we gave you, wonderful. But, think about how you can better use the system to get the responses that you want versus just assuming or hoping that it's going to know exactly what you're thinking. Any questions on this or at any point, or anyone else just want to shower us with wonderful statements like Ron did? We're welcome to those too. That's fine. All right. So I'll move on slightly here. I got 1 or 2 more things that I want to show you all before we conclude. First is we don't know everything about this yet. Nobody does. I'm not even sure that OpenAI does. So as we learn more, we're definitely going to be publishing more content, putting more on the website, doing more events like this to kind of share what it is that we're learning. The best way for all of you to stay up to date is simply to sign up for our newsletter. It requires email only, no weirdness after that. When I send this out, there is a link to it. It will take you to a page that works. We'll fix that. But you'll be able to sign up, put your email in, and otherwise stay up to date. We send out newsletters Monday, Wednesday, and Friday of every week. They have miscellaneous content that we feel is just the good and best content for digital marketing in general, but we'll start to add prompts and AI news in as it comes or as we make new discoveries. The other thing that I want to let everyone know here too, for fractional CMOs in particular, we do have a referral partner program. So this is not unique to AI or ChatGPT in any way. This is more so just a way for you to get more out of a relationship with WebMechanix, one way that we can pay you back for all the work that you've done and the business that you brought our way over the last 10 or 15 years. And the way that this program works is we basically offer 4 individual things to anyone who signs up, and signing up is as simple as a name and an email. The biggest one that people jump to typically, if we do work together, you bring a client to us, that client makes sense for both of us to mutually work on, and they sign up and we do some work for them. We will pay you as a thank you, 25% of any first month fee and 10% a month 2 and 3 thereafter. No strings attached. All you have to do is bring them and we just have to say, yeah, this client makes sense. But reasons that you might do that, one thing that we are well aware of that kind of stinks about being a fractional CMO is that you also have to kind of be the salesperson too, acquiring your own clients. And that can be like the not so fun part of the job. So 2 things we'll offer to help should you need it. One is we've got a huge library of collateral for doing this kind of work for the last 15 years. And so as you need things like case studies or examples of past work that'll help you close a deal and bring on a new client, we're happy to co-brand them and share them if it's something that we think that we'll work on together. Similarly, if someone's asking detailed questions about SEO or paid media, and you're like, yeah, I know the strategy for all that, but I'm not exactly sure which button to press or what bidding strategy to use, we'll give you access to our sales engineers. So if you're on a sales call and you need that little bit of expertise to close a new deal down, we can pull them on the phone for you and have that be a leverage point for you to use. And then as we design new services, things like ChatGPT augmentation, as we're doing custom development, learning more about it, we give this group and our existing clients, the only 2 groups we give access to those beta services at either free or special discounts as we're testing them out before we roll them out to a larger audience. The link to join that hopefully will work. Yeah, exists here. So it gives you a little bit more context about the partner program itself. This is the agreement that you would sign that basically just says we pay you if you bring business, but it says it in legalese. Gives you a sense of who the best clients we work with are, kind of a menu of services where it might make sense to start. And if you have any questions, there's a form you can submit just for what we do. I need help. What do you think about this prospect, etc. So again, all free, no membership fee, nothing like that. You can sign up, and if we work together, great, we'll pay you as a thank you. If not, that's fine too. We're here if you need us. I wanted to make sure that everyone was aware that it is an option for you, and that link will be in this deck that I send out to everybody as well. The end.
Thank you.
Happy to stick around for any questions that anyone has. I got my eyes on the chat if anyone's got them, or you can pop off mute and we can chat for a little bit too. You're welcome, Robin. Thanks for coming.
I have a quick question.
Sure.
This is Amy.
Hey, Amy.
Okay, so I haven't been using this that long, but it's been super helpful. So, when I start a new chat, is it remembering everything from the previous chats? Do you know what I mean? Like, is it keeping? I'm just getting confused on, do I need to go back to the same chat if I'm giving it a new job, right? So if I'm working with client A and we've got this going on, and then I need to move to something different with client B, which is a completely different industry, right? So the persona is different, everything's different. So I'm just wondering, is it confusing the 2 as I'm opening up a new chat and starting a brand new job with it?
Not if you're opening up a chat. So I would keep those separate within chats. So you would have, say, this new chat, this is about client A. You would ask all your questions about client A. It's like, hey, what are you talking about? And then you would have a new one for this is for client B, whatever. And then those will save here. So as you have recurring questions about client A or about client B, you can come back to these saved chats that you have over here on the side. That would be the best way that I would do that. That way, everything in that chat is about that same client. Because while it will generally remember what it is you're talking about within a chat, when you go to a brand new one, it, to our knowledge, defaults back to its like original database. It doesn't necessarily take into account all these things that I've asked it in all of these other chats. Like if I'm in this chat, but I'm referencing it as SalesGPT from this one down here, it might not do as good of a job as if you're asking it within the same chat window.
Okay, that's what I was thinking. I just wanted to get your input. Thank you.
Sure.
Any other final questions?
You have any other tool recommendations as far as like different AI tools that you might use? Not in such a way that I want to be prescriptive. So similar to somebody in the chat way earlier, they're like, hey, I've used Jasper, I've used all these other ones. Experiment with them because they all focus and are trained slightly different. For copy creation, things like Jasper tend to be what a lot of people go to. It is trained slightly better to do copy than just standard ChatGPT, but Jasper is built on top of ChatGPT. So like their database generally is the same thing. It's just a slightly different focus. You will get the same kind of quality answers depending on the quality of your prompt. The tools that you might focus on really have the benefit of not having to prompt from scratch. So like Jasper, it'll have a plugin for Chrome where you start typing an email and you can click the little icon and it'll like then finish writing your email versus going to ChatGPT and saying, I'm writing an email about blank. Here's some context. So there are some shortcuts that those tools will give you, but it all depends on what you need it for. So I'd encourage you to just sign up for some free trials and experiment whichever ones you like best. We are not at the point in our experience with them to say like this one is definitively better for all people than this one over here. Image creation is kind of the same. DALL-E 2, which is the free one from OpenAI, is fine. But again, it's all dependent on your prompt. I will say from what I've heard, mostly Midjourney is the better visual image creation one as far as things like realistic photos and whatnot. But I would spend a significant amount of time doing things like Googling examples of prompts because image creation prompt is significantly more complex than text-based because you have to give it reference images and style and in some cases things like f-stop and all sorts of other photograph things that I'm not super knowledgeable about. But you can get some really awesome stuff out of them. The prompting is significantly more complicated. And then our designers have also been playing around with Adobe's too. I think it's called Firefly.
Yep.
And they've been enjoying that quite a bit. So it's sort of the same thing, like play with the different platforms, figure out which one suits your needs the best. But for image, definitely spend some time on YouTube or Googling around what are the best ways to prompt those systems to get the kind of imagery you want, because that's obviously significantly more subjective than is text-based queries.
Yeah, I'll add a couple of notes from our experimentation. The paid tools like Jasper can be really good if you have a specific use case where you want to integrate with another tool, like for SEO, for example. Jasper AI integrates with Surfer SEO, which is a SEO tool. So if you want to work from one interface and get that optimized content out very quickly, some of those paid tools can be useful for those purposes at the moment. As far as image creation, we actually have been doing experiments between Midjourney and Firefly specifically. Midjourney produced the best quality in terms of image based on the inputs we provided it. Firefly was able to give us more of the specifics that we wanted. So, right, if we had like asked for like a cake and an ice cream, right? Midjourney would, produce a really nice cake, but forget the ice cream. Firefly would give us both the cake and the ice cream, but the fork was like really wonky, right? So something to keep in mind as you're playing with the two tools, just in terms of what you might expect to get back from them.
I have a question related to that.
Go for it.
Yeah, please.
So I'm the one that said I use Maker and I've used Jasper and ChatGPT and so forth. So I just thought of something as you were talking. Have you ever used one AI like ChatGPT to edit something that one of the other more detailed AIs would produce? For example, I see a lot when I use Maker. It tends to be very repetitive. They have more of a robust outline, but it says the same thing like 6 times. So if you ever put something back into ChatGPT and said, hey, remove duplications of concepts and tighten up the grammar or something, have you ever done something like that?
I'll say yes, not necessarily back and forth between, back and forth between systems strategically, but Have you ever done that thing with Google Translate where you put like pasta in and you like translate this into Italian, and then you take the Italian word and you put it in the other side and you're like, okay, translate this back in English, and it says like tortellini, and it's like close, but it's a little different. I think that's kind of what you get when you do that. So it's from a content perspective, what we are told, and there's not really any good way to validate it yet, is that people like Google and Bing and search engines and whatnot can tell if it was written by a person or not. And so while we've tested queries like, hey, ChatGPT, write me a blog post that Google could never know came from you, but we have no idea if that actually works. And so it's possible that by like mixing and matching them from 2 different platforms could get you some pretty good and unique content. But for now, our experience is like these tools are really, really good at the outline level. At some points, even like they give me 1 to 2 sentences level. But to get something really unique that an audience would actually really love, it does require that human touch, at least still for now. And that's core to our belief that all of these systems, like if you think about the fact that they're trained on the internet, they're taking the average of everything on the internet and making that available. So if you want to make something that's above average, you still have to add a little bit of extra on top of that.
Okay, that helps. Thanks.
Right. Any final questions or comments before we wrap? Going once, going twice. Yeah, thank you, Sophie. Yeah, thank you all for joining. Josh, this has been great. I mean, I learned a ton. I'm gonna start playing around with some of these prompts after we hop off here. Before you jump, we are gonna send you guys the deck, and the recording should be coming to your email inbox in the next 1 to 2 days, so look out for that. And yeah, thank you guys for joining. We'll do more of these in the future. If you have any feedback or any other topics you'd like us to cover in the coming months ahead, please let us know, and we'll put them into the queue. But yeah, really excited to keep sharing this stuff with you guys.
Thank you all very much. Had a lot of fun. If you have anything, shoot us an email.
Talk soon.
Bye.